Hey there, nice to see you. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Net's program where we talk to reporters and writers and journalists and editors. And in the second half of our show, we switch gears. And this evening, we are going to be talking to a Bronx opera singer. She is just delightful. And she's going to be making her first appearance at Carnegie Hall, which is why we specifically invited her to join us. But I don't know if Ralph Ortega, the editor-in-chief of City and State New York, is a singer at all, but he's a tremendous writer and a tremendous editor. And it's nice to have my longtime friend, Ralph Ortega, join us again on the Bronx Buzz. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Gary. It's a pleasure being here.
I'm going to just start off with City and State New York. I love this magazine. There you go. It is for any of us who cover the politics in New York, in the state, and in the city. This is where you got to be every single week. There's just a world of stuff in there. So congratulations on it. You've been the editor for a little while now. Any specific changes or point of view that you have input into it that must be successful, because I love it. But a new vision, or is it always the same vision that you've had all these years?
Well, I think we've had. I've been with City and State now. Going to go on 3 years. In October, I started as their acting editor in chief back in 2020, and well, what has happened is we've emerged from the pandemic like everyone else, and we are the same City and State. Delivering deep analysis of politics in the city and all the way up to Albany across the state. And we've done it in these at least in the last 2.5 years, with a renewed focus on reflecting our diverse communities. And, I think you can see this represented in everything from our visuals, our magazine
Yeah, so
cover,
it's presented as a magazine as opposed to a newspaper, but it's just chock full. I want to bring up something which I said to myself. This is Ralph having a good time. This, this section, the city and date for Valentine's Day. I, at first, I said no, they're not going there. But basically, I guess you talk to eligible bachelors and bachelorettes and had who are in politics and had them like put in their little ads for Valentine's Day. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. Did you get any feedback? Did people say, "Oh, that's the craziest thing. It's a political newspaper"? I just thought it added a little personality to it.
I think some folks on Twitter thought I was silly, and of course we're having fun. And when we started the campaign, we had almost 3 dozen people respond. So
Wow. Wow, that because I was wondering about the people who responded. Do they now regret in the paper with all their colleagues and from the governor on down in New York State and the mayor, and they all read it? Would they be upset? But I just thought it was great. I'm applauding.
Well, in fine political form, a consultant reached out to me and told me that they had gone and introduced 2 of these singles, and now they're a match.
Wow, isn't that great? Isn't that great? I was a little intimidated by the ad. I mean, of course, I'm married, but I was intimidated by the ads. I said, "Oh, I could never qualify for this. These are serious people." But it gives. Can't we just be human beings? Wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, let's talk about some serious stuff. The first thing in the paper or magazine, excuse me, that I read every week is this editor in chief editor's note, and I was completely struck by your piece that's in that edition that is entitled "New York City is a Migrant's Best Hope for Staying in the U.S." And I'm going to give a quote that is at the end of it. "Arriving in the city means a more likely chance that they may successfully stay in the U.S., something a city of immigrants should be proud of." So, in your own way, you got right in the center of a national dialogue. Just talk to me about your vision of New York City and why you said, you know what, let's publicly endorse this notion of immigrants. And even despite all the issues, how well we're doing and the fact that we are really trying to do a good job.
Oh, born and raised in the city. My parents were immigrants. You know, I, you know, we've all romanticized the notion of immigration to New York City with stories of Ellis Island, and but this latest wave was a game changer. We'd never had a wave of migrants come this way, deliberately sent here, and you know the city should be proud of itself because while we weren't ready for the sudden influx, the expense of it, the logistics of it, we still responded the way New York has always responded to people arriving here, with open arms. The mayor said many really positive things. His issue's never been with the migrant that's come to this city. You know,
Although let's be fair that he has said that maybe now we shouldn't be required to offer them shelter. He's just defending his administrative stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think also, Eric Adams is, trying to find any possible way to unload the financial
Right. Well,
responsibility,
of course, of course.
and the reality is it has been unfair. The federal
Mhm.
government
Right.
needs to really step in. If we can get help from government local as well. But the mayor sometimes, I think he kind of like does these weird moves where like yeah, saying, oh, the right to shelter he doesn't think it applies to the migrant. Well, guess what, that was immediately pushed back in his face.
Yes, of
you
course.
know
Well, the other thing that they started doing, which I think is sensible, because the people in Canada have been saying, "Come to us," and now apparently we're moving some of these folks out. But they're in our schools. I mean, the children are in our schools, and we're not saying get out of here. We're saying if we had more resources, we would work. You're in, that kind of thing. And so anyway, I really appreciated that you focused on it, and I thought that the way you view it is as a New Yorker, which is refreshing, and also I thought you had the right point of view. Another piece I want to talk about is this disturbed me as a Bronx boy born and bred. Um, the Interborough Express comes up
Mhm.
short. And again, I'm going to quote from your writing: the 5.5 billion light rail service proposed by Governor Hochul leaves out the Bronx, where residents need the additional service just as much as New Yorkers in Brooklyn and Queens. Um, Ralph, you used to cover the Bronx for the Daily News. Why did you do that? It
Gary,
bothers me.
you know what it's like riding the one train, right, from the very northern
Do I
Bronx.
know what it's like riding the one train?
Grab the one in
Yes,
Riverdale,
I do.
right? And it takes an hour, right, to get all the way down to Lower Manhattan.
Of course.
And that's if you're working in Lower Manhattan, right? This just seemed like, my gosh, if you're going to go the distance with um, this new interborough line, the Interborough Express, why not go all the way? I get it. It's the expense. Again, we are limiting ourselves and our vision by these economics, and I understand we can't afford every infrastructure project that comes across the table, but like the Interborough Express is a no-brainer. I mean, you're going to be helping people work.
And if you're talking about generating income or generating, commerce in the Bronx, I mean, you want people to have jobs, and maybe the jobs are going to be in Manhattan. Somebody I happen to my neighbor works in Queens. Boy, if he had a quicker way to get there, because I know he's a night watchman and he works overnights. To get on a train late at night and early in the morning, and ride an hour and a half just to get to work, we'd all do a lot better if we didn't. Do you have a sense of how much money it would cost to add that? Or at this point, if you spend 5.5 billion, spend 6.5 billion and get it all done, right?
I can't recall the estimate for extending it. Honestly, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Um,
But it just would seem, and again, for the purposes of city and state New York, to me the fact that the editor in chief comes right out and says, "Hey, this is what I think we ought to do," is I think very, very, very impressive. Last story I just want to deal with that you wrote about is transparency is needed more than ever as the crisis at Rikers Island continues. Rikers Island is really a disaster, and sometimes I'm shocked. And so, right up there, the New York City Department of Corrections decision. This blows me away. To limit access to body cam videos was a mistake. Who could approve something like that? I mean, in this day and age, where we unfortunately know too much about what's going on at Rikers, and we know what's going on with police officers. Imagine if we didn't have body cams. I mean, I don't get it. It's my problem.
Well, I mean, Commissioner Louis Molina, we followed up since that note I wrote last week that through someone who was submitting some commentary to us, who had done a lot of research and FOIL requests, Freedom of Information, to basically discover Molina's letter explaining his decision that he was explaining that he was trying to live up to the city's charter on the release of such information when it might jeopardize a criminal investigation. However, and he said that if that request had been made of any other agency outside of the Board of Correction, which is the oversight agency that released the video, that the reporter would have been denied. So he felt justified in saying, "Look, you guys shouldn't be doing this." But he, this was
all right. I appreciate you representing that. You didn't make the sale with me. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Last question. Listen, Jeff and Annie and Rebecca. They've been on our show. You work with just top-notch people. Do you do a lot of research, or do you just kind of hope the phone rings one day to come up with? Because your stuff is always unique and interesting. We got about a little less than a minute. How do you come up with stuff? Like, what do you do? Or
we have a daily meeting,
right?
And we also have a bi-weekly story planning meeting. And I can tell you, if you joined us in either of those discussions, you'll find a group of people that thinks about politics in a way that no one else does. The kind of stuff we write about tends to be outside of the general news cycle. I mean, it's part of the news cycle, but we take it to a level of analysis and interpretation that really isn't necessarily like breaking news.
So you sit there and watch and say, "You guys didn't talk about this. I'll write about this." Boys, listen, you're the best, and keep working real hard for us, because what you're doing is just absolutely outstanding, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate City and State New York. I am eagerly waiting to get to my mail today, and we record these on Monday, by the way, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's really going on in New York City and State. Thank you so much, Ralph Ortega, Editor-in-Chief, City and State New York.
Thanks a lot, Gary, and thank you for everything you do at BronxNet.
We're just trying to keep our 1.4 million people happy. We'll take a short break, ladies and gents, and then switching gears completely and bring on just a delightful young woman who is an opera singer who's going to play at Carnegie Hall. She practiced.